It is now 7 o'clock. I'd like to bring this public hearing to start. If you would all please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In accordance with town charter requirements, the Board of Finance will hold a public hearing on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 at 7 p.m. Monday, May 2nd, here in the Plainfield Town Auditorium. All electors of the town and eligible property owners who wish to be heard will be allowed to do so at this meeting. As we begin this hearing, I'd like to make an opening comment from a personal standpoint. Is at the outset of this budget process, which actually began back in December, my goal and my hope was that we would be able to either keep the mill rate flat or reduce it. The budget that you have in your hand that's been posted on the town hall does reflect those efforts, which was a collective effort by both all department heads, including the Board of Ed, the town side, and the police department, making significant contributions to this whole process, along with the other department heads that represent the town's services. The process is a long, arduous one. It involves a lot of meetings. From a personal standpoint, I made a point of meeting with most of the department heads. I regret that I was not able to do so with everyone. But getting to know a little bit about what their responsibilities are to you, the residents of the town of Plainfield. So I would like to say a personal thank you to everybody that participated in this process for all the efforts and the contributions that they made in analyzing what we need for the town to function to keep the town moving forward. And I think the efforts are shown in the budget that you have in your hand. In a short while, I'm going to open up the microphone for anyone that wishes to make comments or ask questions. I would ask this, that you keep your questions directed and keep your time considerate of your neighbors. There may be a lot of people that want to speak, and we want everybody to have an opportunity that has something to share. The requirement will be that you use the microphone, you identify yourself, and you identify whether or not you are a resident of the town of Plainfield or a property owner, so that we can get a better understanding of what your perspective is on the question that you have. At this time, I would like to allow the superintendent, Paul Brennan, if she would like to make any opening statements before we turn the floor over to the town Board of Selectmen. And then we'll proceed to allow you folks to have your opportunity. So, Paul, is there anything you would like to share?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize, that microphone was a little bit more powerful than I initially expected. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the town for how welcoming you've been, not just at the schools, but at the youth events, on the league field, at the soccer field, all the places. I really feel that I've been warmly welcomed, and I appreciate that very much. If you look at the second page of the budget, that's probably the most important piece of the Board of Ed budget for me to share today. It talks about our budget adoption timeline. When we began our budget process, which really started in October, November, we projected out what the budget would be if everything in current district held exactly where it is. That means this is where the contracts would hold, if all staff stayed where they were, if we fixed all of our costs and only increased our costs based on what we knew were the increased costs for heat and oil. That initial budget of $37,196,446 would have been a 3.34% increase to the community. The first changes that we made at the Board of Ed with Mr. Lucier's help was to offset the high cost of transportation for next year. This is a new transportation contract that Plainfield Schools is operating under. This new transportation contract represents a $330,000 increase over previous transportation contracts. And as you realize, the cost of transportation, including fuel and other pieces, is going forward. We offset that in our initial cuts with $200,000 of federal grant money to reduce that down to a 2.79% increase. The next thing we did as a district was take a look at staffing, anticipated retirements, places where we could redesign positions, combine other positions, and make cuts. Within that, we found another $277,200, which is represented in our budget. From those pieces, we then worked with the staff to reduce the total budget down, and you can see the different iterations when we first presented in January, when we then made further adjustments after people asked for further cuts, both at the town level and at the school level, to have a budget presented today of $36,489,209. That represents a 1.38% increase over previous budgets. It's also a significant reduction with multiple cuts from the 3.34%, which would be an identical budget that we have right now, simply based on the cuts. As you look through the budget document, and as you look specifically to the first page, which breaks individual pieces through by category, I would note that the largest areas of increase come in non-certified employee salary, for which many of our contracts have fixed positions. That increase is $192,000. As I noted, our per pupil transportation increase in this budget is $130,029. We've also made the choice to increase our contributions to the town pension by $100,000. That's reflected here. Other pieces like Social Security, heat, energy, certified salaries, and tuition are fixed costs. The district didn't have the ability to adjust, and those are the other increases that are there. All of these numbers, including the very first number, that 3.3%, included our $245,000 savings in health insurance by changing our health insurance programs. As you know, we are a district who has seen a slight drop in the number of students over the last few years. That's reflected here as well. We've also seen a significant increase in the needs of our students. As you look forward at the budget, I would highlight the fact that you'll note that it speaks to an increasing poverty level in the community. A few years ago, our community had a free and reduced lunch level of 29.1%. Our district, as of this year, is at 54.8% of the students receiving free and reduced lunch. We as a district have made cuts both at the school level and at the district level, redefining positions to ensure that we can do all we can to help the students of Plainfield. The Board of Ed is here in support. I would note there are one or two Board of Ed members who are not here because they are currently engaged in negotiation of one of our contracts, which is currently taking place. We're being fiscally responsible in all we do. With that, I'd like to thank the Board of Finance for giving me the opportunity to speak at the onset, and I'm happy to answer any questions as we move through.
Okay, at this time, I would like to welcome First Selectman Kevin Cunningham to speak to the town side budget.
Thank you, Chairman. What you have in the package, which are in the back of the room, is a listing of all of our proposed budget items. Inclusive of that would be our state and local revenues. There are some adjustments to both of those. And there's also been adjustments throughout the entire packet, and I do want to thank all the department heads for helping to come forward with their suggested ideas and their changes and modifications for each of their budgets collectively. So if you take a look also on the back page, you'll note that there are some other items which we'd like to do to go forward with the town, and those are some of the items that are listed in our fund balance. We'd love to continue to increase of the roads repaired, some more items for upgrades for the recreation, also some contractual items which we're in right now with Shepherd Hill, sidewalks, like the road sidewalks, Tower Road Bridge upgrades, and also you'll see the last item there, the IT upgrade for cybersecurity. Those are the budgeted items that we have for presentation for the town. We definitely have also a page which is important as well, which is the proposed 5-year capital plan that was also in the back of the room. It talks about suggested projects for the next 5 years, and that we hope to also bring forward to you as we go through each of those 5 years. I would ask again, if there's anybody that has a question or concern for anything in our budget, that this would be the great time to go through the chair for the Board of Finance and ask or request times to make your questions known or your comments or your concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the floor to any citizen or resident of the town of Plainfield that would like to come to the mic and ask a question or comment on the budget. Again, please identify yourself. where you live, if you are a resident, or if you are just a property owner. So I will open up the mic at this time.
Not that I think I need to raise this for anybody else. Matthew Radant, resident and property owner in the town of Plainfield. I have a quick comment on the budget overall and then a question for the Board of Ed. I'll try to fit that all within 5 minutes. So the last 3 budget cycles that we've used the grant list to base our mill rate off of, we've seen the grant list increase by 1.28% from 19 to 20. We've seen it increase by 1.17 in fiscal year 20 to 21. 21 to 22, we saw it increase by almost 2%. And this current budget process is being predicated on a grant list that has gone up over 3.5%, 3.58%. I think the operative phrase here is unrealized gains when you're looking at the composition of that grant list. These are people's vehicles and property that are going up in the nominal sense. The dollar value is going up. But this isn't a transaction that we're taking a cut of. These gains haven't been realized. People aren't selling their property and enjoying the surplus on the market based on this. I think it could be argued that a lot of this appreciation you could attribute to the government's response to COVID and the crisis, but that being said, it's been largely financed by our central bank, the Federal Reserve, at near 0% interest rates, which are certainly playing a role in the 8.5% inflation rate we're also dealing with right now, the highest it's been in about 40 years. Well before I was born, but also back when your benchmark federal funds rate was closer to 15%, and not 0 to 0.5% as the bedrock of our U.S. economy. I feel like this really needs to be mentioned as part of this process because the mill rate, even though we have a small decrease, nominally speaking, this is still resulting in a tax increase for most people in town. And I think that as a general comment of mine, I would say I would like to see the mill rate decreased for the benefit of the taxpayer, but also looking forward, thinking that certainly whatever the Fed's options might be to try to rein in an 8.5% inflation rate on the heels of creating $4 trillion plus in asset purchases and rescue and stimulus plans for the U.S. economy, I would think we have some pretty stormy days ahead if we're lucky to navigate it safely. My question is towards the Board of Ed regarding the increase in ECS revenue noted at the prior Board of Finance meeting. It was corrected to be $350,000 higher. My question pertains to the Alliance District status that Plainfield now has. Is that increase, the $350,000, does that include anticipated Alliance District funding?
So, Mr. Reel, that's a great question.
Great.
So I am sorry.
Just wanted to make that distinction.
I am sorry, Mr.
I'm a little taller than he is.
Mr. Radant, that is a great question. That increase is tax relief as part of Alliance. It does not include an Alliance District grant. Alliance District grant funding would come on top of that, should an Alliance District grant be given. At this point, there's not an Alliance District grant that's been awarded to Plainfield. Similar districts that have been in this situation before, Thompson, Groton, and a few others, have had to speak to the legislator to get additional funds allocated after the governor's budget. We've already met with one of our senators and had those conversations, and we've already met with the State Department of Ed. We'll know what the procedure is, but at this time, in the governor's budget, in the state budget, which I believe will be finalized on Wednesday, there is not additional Alliance funds, there's simply the additional ECS.
If I may ask a follow-up.
Mr. Chesky.
Thank you for your answer. Then two small follow-ups on that. So if there is no anticipated Alliance funding within that ECS increase, it would stand to reason that the current budget proposal does not include the Alliance expenditures that the district would be looked on to fund.
So that's correct. However, what we'll have to do is we'll have to wait until we learn if we are officially made an Alliance District. I know there's some documents floating around until the governor's budget is approved. We actually don't receive official notification of being an Alliance district. We as a district were not invited to the Alliance Symposium. We haven't received any of the formal documentation or letters that would come out after the 4th. At that time, the district will be required, should we be awarded the full Alliance status, which, as you noted, the ECS funds indicate that we will. The district will be required to develop an Alliance plan around 4 individual areas and speak to how we'll meet the Alliance goals for data monitoring, student performance, climate, culture, other pieces along those lines. We will be required to write that plan regardless of whether or not the state chooses to give us any Alliance funding.
So the funding for those programs would have to come in addition on top of what is already part of this budget proposal, if I'm understanding that correctly?
We would be looking to address some of that within the budget as we've already done.
My second follow-up was based on the $350,000 increase. The governor's proposal, last I had seen, was about $26,000 higher than that. I was curious as to why that figure wasn't used for putting together this budget.
The number that I got, I received directly from the State Department of Ed over the phone. I don't know what iteration of the governor's budget has been published. My understanding is that the Office of Policy Management changes those numbers at times, and I copied down the number I was read.
Right. Thank you.
It's a fair question.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to approach the mic with a question or a comment?
I'm going to lower him a little bit shorter. Still up. My name is Alex. I'm a resident of the Rose. I think you made that for your notes. I live in Plainfield, obviously, but I have a question regarding pay raises. I know speaking probably for everyone in this room, I'd love a pay raise. Obviously, you guys don't make those decisions, but I work just like everybody else, and a lot of us around here aren't getting pay raises because COVID's kind of hit everybody. Every business is hurting. I'm not opposed to giving anybody a small pay raise, 1%, 2%. You know, you guys work hard. I'm not saying you don't, but I do have some questions as to what constitutes the need for a 12% pay raise.
Can you be specific as to which?
Specifically, the department head for finance, it's changing by $11,000, a little over, which is a 12% raise. Or the first selectman, you're looking at a 6% change. As somebody who is concerned about paying taxes and my tax rates and all that fun stuff of now being an adult, I think that's a little on the high side. I just want to make that note.
Well, one of the things that part of the process is evaluating what standard compensation is throughout this region. And what we've done is we've looked at other municipalities that have the same type of format, same type of government, and we evaluated what those particular salaries were. And I can show you some documentation, but even with these increases, our employees, specifically those new departments that you've spoken to, are on the low side. Even with these particular increases that you're looking at.
I do understand that. We, working in a state government, or for you guys town, probably do make a little bit less money, but I hate to say it, but as well that we're all really hurting the time to start raising things.
Well, that's a fair point. But at the same time, we have to take care of the town of Plainfield. And if you could see what the day-to-day operations are, you see two folks here tonight, working well past their standard hours. There's a lot of extra effort that goes into what they do. And again, we base this on what area municipalities in our area are doing and what those compensation packages are. And I can show you paperwork on it, the comparison.
I believe you.
Okay. So I understand your concern about that, but having gone through the process and knowing that some of these folks on all of these departments have not received a raise in a while, I think it was an appropriate measure to take.
Thank you.
Before you leave, Alex, can I get you just for the record your last name so she can document?
There is LAI. Okay. Oh, I see. Just so you don't have to worry about it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Ferrari resident, and what was the other thing I needed to tell you? Property owner. Okay, so all of this is extremely confusing when I look at this. We've only been in Plainfield a couple of years. And I know this has to do with the Board of Ed. My question is, I have heard talks, I've been to some of the meetings, that you need an increase, and I understand that my kids go to Plainfield schools, but then you make cuts. At this point, we are all hurting. I know that the police department has taken cuts. The town of Plainfield in general has made cuts. And if I can kind of work through all of this, which is again very difficult, I feel like the Board of Ed is not making as many cuts as they could. I know that our kids' education is very important. Again, I have children that go here, and the education of my children is top priority. But with oil going over $6 a gallon, with food skyrocketing, most people that I've talked to, their budget for food has doubled. Our gas prices have doubled, and since Biden came into presidency, I feel like, as I've talked to my husband, who is on the Board of Finance, and I've asked him some questions, because again, I don't quite understand all of this. And plain and simple, I feel like there could be more done that will not hurt the teachers or our students. So I'm asking, what else can be manageably taken away for the foreseeable future? And I'm not asking for the next 5, 10 years. I'm asking for maybe just this year, this budget, that we can cut until our economy gets maybe back, because we are hurting. And some people, even $28, or I know that our mill rate might be going down, but is our car tax going up? And that's a tax we have to pay every single year. I have 2 vehicles, and so it feels like there's still more that could be taken care of, and that could be sacrificed on the Board of Ed's part for just a small amount of time, and not asking for a long time. So is there anything else that you are seeing that could be possibly cut that is not going to make our teachers or our children suffer?
So thank you for the question. So let's talk a little bit, as I talk about this, about the historic Board of Ed budget. As I started when I began, our expenses alone increased us at about 3% a year, generally speaking. Last year, the board received a 0.13% increase. The year before that, it was 0.06. The year before that, we actually went down. We had a negative 0.18. So one of the reasons why you may say it seems as though there's not many cuts to make is because for the last 3 years, places where there were FET or other items were cut, while districts around us received on average 2.5% to 3%. When we take a look at this budget, as I noted, our initial cost would have been 3.34, and from that we cut $708,000. Some of that $708,000 has been pushed off into grants and other places. We have anticipated retirements. We have restructured central office so that we can be more efficient where we are. In my budget presentation, which is on the Board of Ed website, both from January 1st and from, I believe the date is February, there's a full presentation that outlines each one of the schools and the cuts that were made at the school. The only thing added in this budget, which wasn't there previously, is that we're trying to restore a pre-K teacher at $58,000. Additionally, if you take a look at those $400,000 of increases, those $400,000 of increases, the largest piece of that is $130,000 in student transportation, which is a contract that's fixed. The second piece is $100,000 in pension, which is fixed, which the town has asked me to put in. And then on top of that, I have $192 in fixed certified salary employee, which is fixed based on the number of staff negotiated by contract. So those 3 pieces alone account for $430,000 of the $495,000 increase. The other pieces of that are largely Social Security at about $70,000, heat, energy, which we're anticipating to go up over $40,000 to $50,000, and then fuel and gasoline. So those really where those pieces are. So when we're taking a look at things that I don't want to cut is I don't want to cut the pension contribution to the town. I think that's an important thing. But certainly we don't have the ability to cut per pupil transportation. That's a fixed cost. Are there other pieces that could be cut in other equipment in other places? It's a pretty thin budget as it is. And it's a pretty thin budget because historically over the last 3 years, we've made cuts and we've pushed a lot of positions. There's about $700,000 in positions in ESSER grants that are positions, many of which once existed in our budget that were pushed into grants. In 2024, those grants will expire.
Okay, another question I have is, if we have, well, let me ask you, how many students do we have in the Plainfield High School?
As of right now, that's actually in the document that you have in front of you.
Okay.
And our enrollment at Plainfield High School this year is about 520. It's 510 here, but it's actually up from there.
Okay, so my question for that is, how many principals and assistant principals do we have?
So there's one principal at Plainfield High School, there's 2 assistant principals. That would be equivalent to what you see in the neighboring districts. The only district I know of that has one assistant principal of similar numbers, Putnam has one, but their high school is under 275 right now.
So is it now feasible to only have 2 principals for 500 students, especially since you've said our rate of children being in the high school is dropping significantly? Is there a reason why we could not maybe have only 1 principal and 1 assistant principal?
There is. So legislation changed in about 2009, which changed the duties of principals, assistant principals, and administrative staff. One of them is there's a high burden right now as a safe school climate coordinator to coordinate and report up to the staff. The second one is with the re-upping of TVAL, there was statutory requirements about administrators evaluating teachers and certified staff, which required a certain number of observations at a time in the classroom, which right now the number of administrators we have actually struggles to meet. I have central office staff helping the largest schools, specifically the high school, with some of those evaluation pieces. Each one of those individuals that's there has assigned duties mandated by law. We at one time actually had part-time assistant principals at the elementary schools. Those are things that have been cut.
Okay. My other question, and thank you for those answers. My last question is, everything that you have asked for budget-wise, let's say for the last 10 years, have you, for it to be allocated, I saw for, let's say there is the driveways for the gyms need to be refinished. I understand all those. Has everything been taken and put towards those projects specifically and not been taken, let's say, okay, so we didn't really need it this year, let's put it towards something else? Has everything been taken care of accordingly that you say, I know we've got a lot of the buildings, asbestos has been taken care of in all of the buildings, and the upgrades and such, has everything gone to what it's supposed to be gone to? And if it's not, has it been done in a way that it shows on here, okay, so we didn't necessarily need so much money for, let's say, resurfacing, but we had to put it towards there. Does that make sense?
It does. I think the answer is actually very complex, but I'll simplify it. The short answer is that we put together a 5-year capital plan, which this budget, the Board of Ed budget, does not fully fund. If you were to take a look at the capital improvement plan that's included in this piece that the town has voted on and the board has voted on, there's almost $1 million in capital improvements that we would like to address next year because we feel our buildings need those. We know that this budget can't absorb $1 million in capital improvement. And in fact, if you were to take a look at, and I'll try to find the exact page, it's page 11 in your packet, and you take a look at our full budget for capital improvement, pardon me while I put my glasses on, you'll see that our full budget next year, I've increased it to address some of the problems, but we're only looking at $228,000. That doesn't address HVAC, that doesn't address the roof. What I have been doing is we've been utilizing money in a 2% set aside which captures overruns to capture projects, and I've been capturing those projects based on need. I can't speak to what occurred 10 years previously. I can speak to the fact that we've done walkthroughs of this building. The Board of Finance has joined them, and I thank the Board of Finance because they've been incredibly involved. Our first selectman has been incredibly involved, even providing me advice when needed on groups to do. Just in the last 4 weeks, I can speak to the HVAC being addressed in part at the ECC, paving being done at the ECC, significant work being done to address issues related to drainage at Moosop Elementary School, and the gym floor being done at Shepherd Hill. Mr. Lucier.
Also the playground at Moosop.
The playground at Moosop was also addressed, and those who have been to many meetings will know that I've talked about vehicles. We have finally purchased a new plow truck. It goes in forward and reverse. So those are all things that we've managed to address, much of that out of the 2% set aside. If I was a taxpayer, and I looked at the capital improvement plan and I said, these items aren't budgeted. Historically, they have not been fully budgeted. What we've done is we've used underruns to address those projects as they come, and we try to address as many of them as possible in May and June, both because of the weather and other places. I do want to speak to asbestos though, because I understand that there may have been some comments online about asbestos. So at this point, all asbestos in the schools is contained, and there is not exposed asbestos. As part of our asbestos mitigation plan, there are 2 classrooms that are led to be addressed. Those are both at Moosup Elementary School. We presented that in our capital improvement plan, and that work is slated to begin the last week of June, and that is budgeted for and approved by the Town Board of Finance out of the 2% set aside. So that work will be completed this summer, and we will have addressed all of the asbestos. As you may know, we have some older buildings, and underneath some of those tiles, there are older asbestos tiles. Moosup Elementary was the state's first all-electric elementary school. But we've been told both by EastCon and our inspectors that we have treated that properly, encapsulated it properly, and that we don't need to do further work with those pieces.
Okay, I appreciate that. I didn't know about that. I was just addressing that. So I do want to say thank you. I appreciate your answers. It does explain this. But I would just go back to my first point that things are very rough right now, and if there's any way that you guys can look at the budget and do possibly a short-term cut on things that we can wait on that are not going to be detrimental, it would be very, very much appreciated, because you do understand that we are more of a lower income town, and the rates of everything have skyrocketed, and it is hurting all of us. I can't go get a job because I have to be the designated driver for my children, and there are 5 of them, and there's a lot of places to go with school and sports and appointments, and my husband works 3 jobs, and he goes to Little League, and he volunteers in a lot of places, and so I know a lot of people are going to be hoping the same thing, that he would reevaluate this, and just remember that there's a lot of people hurting right now. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to approach the mic with questions?
Hello, Joanne Cunningham, 12 Supply Road. I'm going to specifically talk about...
Can you use the microphone?
Yeah, good use.
People
We
here.
can't hear you.
Tip the microphone up just a little.
If it falls down, it's going to bump me on the head. Maybe that's good then. Anyways, I'm speaking, first of all, for my husband. He puts in very long hours. He's done a lot in the past 2 years. Way back, there was another 2 years that he was on. He is almost 24/7 here. He's dedicated to the town, trying to get numerous things in which he has accomplished. It's been, I think, a wonderful thing for the town of Plainfield. He's for the town of Plainfield. You know, just like, yes, the pandemic has hurt a lot of people. He was here solely, almost by himself through the whole thing, when people had to stay home. He was here. Yes, people maybe lost their jobs and not being able to get back. I know he puts so much hours in now, from what he actually makes, of the hours that he puts in, it's pennies. So we're not trying to get a lot, and he's not trying to get a lot, but I really think the man deserves it, along with some of the other people who are needing or who would like to have a raise that have not had any in years. The finance director has done a wonderful job, certainly, you know, really devoted and well earned. So I just ask the board that you consider this, and you know, he's going to be here, he's going to do his job anyways, because that's the type of man that he is. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to come forward and share some thoughts or ask questions?
I want to last. You gotta say the best to last. Okay? I probably don't need a microphone. Okay. Cunningham. I'm with that one. Okay, I've got it. Hi, guys. This is much smaller than I thought. I thought there was going to be tons of people. So hi, my name is Cunningham, and I do live in the town of Plainfield.
Can you move up to the mic?
Everyone can hear me, right? Hello. Yeah.
It helps.
Okay, so I'm excited to be here. I've learned a lot from you guys, and I appreciate all that you do. You guys do work pretty hard, and you guys don't get a lot of credit for all the stuff that you do. It's more of like, can you do more? Can you cut this? Can you do that? Okay, well, we can only do so much, okay? So I appreciate you guys for all everything you do. I do have a little favoritism because of, you know, my dad. But I actually look at it all around the board for everybody else who does work really hard, and I do think that the town should kind of consider that as, you know, I can't speak for many people, but being the daughter of the selectman, there's many nights where you don't sit and you don't eat as a family, okay? People don't see that side of it, okay? I don't see him. I don't get to have time with him on the weekends because he's volunteering, he's working, he's on phone calls, I have to respect that. So there's a lot of backstory that people don't take into initiative, okay? They do work really hard to make the town better for you guys, and I think that they should get the credit for that. So that's kind of my story about it. But again, I do appreciate everything you guys do, okay? That's all I'm going to say. All right.
No, I don't need a mic because I have a very big mouth. So, Madeline Garner, Plainfield. I'm a resident here. I had one lady ask me, so I'm going to ask her one question. The parking lot across the street from the old high school.
Direct answer would be the town does own that, and yes, we have that in our plans to actually pave it over. First thing we have to do, though, is have it, the engineer take a look at it to actually get the dimensions of the facility, how much we can actually pave. We plan on doing that first with the town engineer, and then after that, we're going to be looking at how much it costs to pave it over. That's inside that $300,000 that you have see here.
Okay. My second thing is Board of Finance. If you take the percent, what is it, 6% for the selectmen, correct? What is that weekly? Has anybody done the math for that? Was it like $4,000 a year? More. So it barely takes even a percentage out of the budget. For a man who has done so much in our town in 2 years, bringing in businesses, listening to whatever political party you're in, he has gone far and beyond for both. He has been asked to do several things and he's made them happen. So I believe that after almost 3 years of being in office, I don't see a problem with asking for a small raise, especially with inflation going on. I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there on that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes.
I do appreciate the comments made by the public. I do want to have a little more of an explanation for those people who don't understand the process and what happened this year. I think we put together a budget. We had some numbers available for those staff members who are not in union. We had them at 3%. A member of the Board of Finance on April 13th said, how many hours do you work? Because you are here a lot and you're doing a lot of work for the town. I think you heard from my family, I don't see them at all. But what we're trying to do is trying to accomplish the best we can for the town. I want people to go back and look at the history of how many years we've had selectmen who have taken 0 for a raise. And we're talking maybe 6 or 7 since the time I've been in town. That compounding effect makes it so that it's much more difficult for someone who wants to run for the position. You want to do it for that much or that little, basically. I think the comment that was also made that night on April 13th, did you realize that one of your town highway supervisor makes more than the first selectman? So Kelly and I put together a packet for the next meeting on the 20th, just to give you an idea of how much money comparatively other people in those positions get. And it's not just the first selectman, it's all 3 selectmen. It's also the finance director. It's also, as we spoke that night on the 27th, the issue is also for the rec director and for the grant writer. For people to understand that we want to keep these people here, you don't see the day-to-day. You really don't see the day-to-day. If I was to lose the finance director, we'd have to start all over again. That would be my third time through with a different finance director. And what we're going to do right now, we went through before when we changed over from our previous finance director to bring Kelly back. Tom was with me for those interviews. This was our best candidate. If we were to lose Kelly, we'd be in a world of hurt right now. And so we do have Kelly as contracted. That's why the 12% is listed there. It's contracted. The other people who are at 6%, just to give you an idea how much these people work and how well they work, we have a grant writer, and we were asked, I think, at your last meeting to give a total of roughly how much money that grant writer's brought in just a little over a year.
$700,000.
$707,000 that grant writers brought into the town of Plainfield and still working for more. So I think that's value that you're looking at. Our next up, we did talk about how other people in the town hall or other areas, we look to be able to compensate them properly in the following fiscal year. We talked about that with our town clerk, our tax collector, and there may be one or two more, but we'll look at that next year. So what we did, we put together the numbers we thought was reasonable, and thought 6% was reasonable. I can see where people may not have understand the whole process, but that's how it happened. So it wasn't something I was trying to shove in at the last minute. It was a request that came from the Board of Finance. We put some numbers together and we brought it to the public, at a public meeting to the Board of Finance. So that's what we were looking for.
The other point I would like to be very clear about, this is for the office of selectmen. While it's very evident the amount of time and effort our current first selectman has put in, this is not just for him. This is for the office of the selectman who runs the town. If you look at other municipalities, you'll find out that this particular position in this town is vastly underpaid. This is a small step in correcting.
One final piece to that is people also to understand, due to unforeseen circumstances last year, those same people who were non-union received 0 for their increases. We received a stipend at the end of the year, but our salaries were still at the lower end. So that's why I made sure that everybody got something coming back into the non-union people so that they got a little more money.
Are there any other questions or comments that anyone would like to approach the mic and share at this time? Not, then I believe at this point that we'd look for a motion that we conclude these public hearings.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? I want to thank you all for your time and for your interest in coming out, and for those of you especially that shared your thoughts. I appreciate those. Tomorrow there will be a Board of Finance meeting at 6:30.